the session of the afternoon, the first session of the afternoon. Now we are going through our last pair, the last story of the day, and we have Reshma Valliappan and also Emma Burns. Reshma is an artist, an activist, and she has been working on the right of legal capacity now for a long time, and she runs, and she's a founder of an organization called the Red Door that creates awareness about mental health in India. And as a response, we will have, or supporting Reshma, because the original person that should be here was Roxanne Miki Duke, but she couldn't make it. But we will have Emma, who is a PhD student of the center, and she's standing for Roxanne today. So Reshma is.
Hi everyone. Can you hear me? No. No? Is the mic now? Yeah. Do you hear my voice? Yeah. Oh great, your voice hears. Well, I'm a voice hearer also. So I guess that's all of us now. And we're here for the Voices Project. So I just hope you're a really good listener then, so I can diagnose you with schizophrenia too. So I'm going to start with my story. It's called The Humor in My Tumor. And I mean, Roxanne, who's supposed to be here, we are supposed to actually title our presentation R Square. But that's also a pun. So what I'm going to ask you to keep in mind is I'm full of puns and double meanings and triple meanings, so you might want to play that around in your head as I go along, because sometimes I can be really fast. And sometimes I might just give you pauses, because I'm probably transported to another planet by then.
I'm going to step in every now and then just to maybe...
She's a voice, the annoying voice.
Yeah. I'm not voice today. And I'll be doing a lot of this, which is how we decided how to represent Roxanne.
Fair enough. Fair enough.
We'll just start by asking Reshma about the artwork that you see here in the first slide.
Okay, so this artwork was sketched by me in 2011 March actually, and it's pretty symbolic for me because I finished sketching it on the 30th of June 2011. The reason why it's symbolic is I had a brain surgery for a tumor that was on the left hemisphere of my head. And therefore, the entire right side of my body had to experience partial body convulsions, facial tics, and all of that. And that's why the X over there was actually pretty symbolic for me. It's more of a mirror. If I'm looking at it, if you're looking at it, it's going to show this side. So it was this part of my head that was actually chopped, so like Hannibal Lecter drilling through my head. It was pretty cool, but not for my parents. So that was really how I came up with this artwork.
So you're going to maybe tell us a little bit about the background, about your own history.
Yeah, so you're probably wondering how is my tumor connected to what I'm all saying. And it's been quite a journey for me because it's difficult to tell you my story. It's a really long story. I represent two countries over here. One is India and Malaysia. And for me, it's more of what are the things I've gone through in life. Affair with death, well, I'm supposed to be dead. I shouldn't be standing here, so I should be dead by the age of 2 because I had Rey syndrome. And that's why I put a tick mark next to it. I've had childhood abuse, so that's another tick mark. I've run away and experienced things at the age of 15, just before my 15th birthday in Malaysia, and that became a tick mark for me, which highlights the rest of my story with psychiatry. Heartbreaks and love affairs, that's another tick. Popularity and learning who your true friends are, that's also another tick. Being used, taken advantage of, that's another tick. Thrown out of class, vandalism, bunking, smoking, hyperactive, rebelliousness, also to add, I was in correctional facilities, religious camps. Tick, taken to a different country for a 2-month holiday in '96 after I ran away from home. Turned out to be 12 years. There's also a tick mark. heroin and chase the dragon if you've chased the dragon, brown sugar. Take marijuana and alcohol, take sleeping under benches in the streets, disguising as a boy, take turmoiling into alternate states of realities and lapses of memory, take breaking down at the peak of your youth, take surrounded, take, and it never ended for me. And some of you are still reading, so I had to just pause in between all of that.
So this brings us forward to 2011.
Yes.
And some things happened there. You've described this part of your life as the irreversible madness.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. That's the irreversible madness of this system. Can you tell us a little bit about what happened this time?
As you can probably read on the screen, it was 21st of May 2011 on a Saturday evening. I was experiencing body convulsions and seizures for 2 months whole. But on this evening, it got too much, where my parents were also trying to come and hold me, and my hand just jerked and slapped my mom like that. And I lost control, and to the extent I thought, probably I'm going to split into two, and I'm going to turn into the Hindu goddess avatar of Ardhana Reshma, one boy, one female, one male, one female. Because it was really painful. I could feel seizures, like half of my groin and my butt had seizures and the other did not. So it was really scary for us for me to experience that. But when I was taken into the hospital, before I was taken into the hospital, into the emergency ward, I was already given a 0.25 mg of Reston. For someone of my size, that's good enough to eat. But when I was taken in, they gave me another half of a 0.25, and all of those doctors were asking my mom and my dad questions as to, they want to know like what's happened, blah, 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 what are the symptoms, etc. And we were giving them the state of my seizures, that I've had a shoulder pull. My mom was trying to convince them, and tell them that it's probably got to do with malaria or dengue, because I came back from Nepal and she was telling them that I was complaining about headaches and fever for about 2 months right after that. And she was checking me every day, and it wasn't something imaginary. But the problem with them is, they see a girl with a tattoo, they see a girl with piercings. I was smelling of alcohol since it was Saturday evening, and I was smoking back then. That was the first line of stereotyping me. That probably I'm on drugs. So they asked my mom, is she on drugs? And they saw my cuts over here and everywhere, and just took them somewhere else. Again, my mom was trying to tell them and direct them to not look at my physical appearance. So then they asked her, does she have a history of mental illness and stuff like that? And it just came out of her mouth, schizophrenia, and that's it. It's sort of, they refuse to look at anything else, It's just, oh no, she's having psychosomatic disorder. They put me on the other half of the other half of the pill. They wrote me off and said, go back home. They gave my parents a prescription, and on the prescription it read a bunch of other medications. I refused to take those medications because by then I was not taking medications for schizophrenia. I've been off medication for schizophrenia since 2008 because of high allergies to a lot of medications. And I can live with the voices in my head of my imaginary friends and stuff. So the next day when I showed up in the doctor's office, and I was telling him that something is wrong with me, and I want you to check me up properly. He said, I'm not going to do that. And I said, why not? He said, because you don't want to take your medications. Why don't you take your medications? I've given them to you. I said, because I don't need those medications. I've been trying to tell you and tell your doctors in that hospital about the problems I'm having, and he just cut me off saying that I'm not interested in the dialogue that you had with those doctors. You do not disturb my Saturday and your parents' Saturday and everybody else's Saturday. So I was like, wow, am I going back to being that same, is the world looking at me as that brat, that rascal who's just trying to ruin everybody else's Saturday because I'm not a 15-year-old anymore? But that's really what he said, and I just looked at him and said, you know what, fuck off. You don't know how to treat people like me. And you shouldn't even be sitting here if you can't talk to me properly, because I'm trying to tell you about what's happened, and my mom's trying to tell you about what's happened. But that is the system, you know, and the system is so patriarchal and it's so patronizing that actually my mom took his side only because I used the word fuck off. My mom's a typical Indian housewife. For her, fuck off is our sin. You know, so she actually yelled at me when I came back home, and at that point it was my younger sister who told my mom, you know, you should listen to Didi, Didi's older sister. Why aren't you listening to what she's saying? Why are you so concerned about what she told the doctor about fuck off? But that's the system, and I spent about a month just living with those seizures and doing the work that I was doing without my parents believing me, and so that's actually what I wrote. So I used a lot of social media in my work. I used Facebook and Twitter to rave and rant and maybe complain and just get my voice heard by my friends or even the mentors who are in the system. And this is really how I managed to write the experience, because I was using my phone. And I had no control over my movements or the numbers on the screen. So that's really as it is.
And this is something that Roxanne had also discussed yesterday in the writing workshop, that this passage in itself is a good representation of what Reshma was going through at the time. The way that it's written, it's just, even to look at it, you can get at some of the distress that was being caused during this whole process. I think we're going to move along to
yeah, to the next, let's just skip these slides actually.
24.
Yes, so I'm fast forwarding to late 2012. I love using humor in a lot of things that I do, so I always tell doctors, you know, why do you take meds to understand me? I'm not going to take your meds because you can understand my hyperactivity. But coming to 2012 was when we changed my neurologist, and he gave me anti-epileptics, mood stabilizers, and anti-anxieties. And I said, I don't want them because I have an allergy, and I'm trying to tell you I have an allergy and have an adverse reaction to me. I mean, you guys have heard of what a fart is, right? It's stinky, it's smelly, it's gross, and if you're a woman, it's double gross. And yeah, I was succumbed to farts. Thanks to those medications, it ruins my body image because I'm an artist, you know, and I have to go out and meet people, and it just does things to you when you're standing there and there's this thing called fart. And then with the anti-anxiety, I actually developed hives, and that 4 hours that I was trying to figure out what was happening to me, I started scratching myself on one arm, and I got tattoos all around, and then I see blood oozing out, and I'm going here, and I'm going here, and everywhere, and I'm like, I'm not turning into an Indian man scratching my balls, but this is serious. You know, this is, I really couldn't deal with that. But it was a Sunday when that happened, and the doctor refuses to pick up his phone, you know. Thank God for Google at that point, and I had to Google it and my dad was at the pharmacy picking up his medications when I said, Dad, do not get that particular antihistamine because that would actually react with my anxiety meds. That's really what 2012 did to me, because I had a lot of other side effects after that. I was experiencing suicidal ideations that I've never had when I had schizophrenia. I experienced anxiety and breathing issues that I've never experienced before. I mean, the neurologist told me, you know, you get rid of your cats. I'm like, no, I'm not getting rid of my cats. They gave a pump and, you know, the inhaler, saying that I have asthma because I have an allergy to my cats. And I said, I've never had it throughout my entire life. How do I get it right now? But that's what they did. They kept pumping me into drugs, saying that I'm having these symptoms because I'm not taking medications for schizophrenia. The system couldn't understand how I could stand there, I could be articulate about my experience and live without medications for schizophrenia. So they had to find a way to still put drugs for something else that I had and make that seem like it's a part of my schizophrenia.
Speaking about the system, can you tell us a little bit about what you said about how it affected your relationship with your parents?
Yeah, so during the same period I actually was seeing a therapist I consider one of the good therapists, and in the third session I walked out because I went in one alter ego, I came out with 10. You know, I ended up hating my parents so much. The system actually puts you in that situation. It tells you about how your parents are not doing this and you should talk to your parents about that and blah, 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 blah. I've never really experienced that with my parents. All of a sudden I walk out and I've got all this anger directed towards my parents because when I walk in, the therapist says, you're going to be a yummy case. I'm like, okay, you want to date me or you want to eat me? Like, what do you mean by that? I'm going to be a yummy case. I mean, but that's the danger of what's happening. Because I go in there to tell about how I'm trying to deal with my distress of having to live with now a post-brain tumor, or a post-seizure, or all of that, or a post-epilepsy, but they're so concerned about my schizophrenia. I'm like, schizophrenia's over. That's like backstory. Like, I'm not interested in talking about that anymore. But no, they go back and they feed me with Lang and Jung and, you know, your family's done this, and oh, I see what your father has done and your mom's not done. And I really grew hating my parents that I was starting to act out even more than when I had schizophrenia. I would actually strangle my mom and go up to my dad and call him names. And I woke up at times with needles in my throat. And then when I finally had a suicide attempt in 2013, they blamed it on my schizophrenia. It was only when Bhargavi Davar, my mentor organization, spoke to actually a couple of other people from the Western world about the drugs I was on and realized that came with the black box warning. I was already showing anemia and I was driven to suicidal and homicidal tendencies that I've never really displayed. And interestingly enough, my psychiatrist actually took my side over there because the neurologist blamed it on my schizophrenia and told him, you know, you supported her when she didn't want to take her medications, and this is what now she's up to. But what was really lovely about what he saw me as a person. In my story, my psychiatrist actually, I mean, we would fight and argue quite a lot, and I would challenge him, and he saw me as a person behind that label. And I told my dad, because my dad reached a point of collapse, you know, he's holding the family. It's not my mom who could hold the family. And he couldn't imagine why my dad and me are very much alike. It's why he supports the nonsense and the ruckus that I do in life. But he actually couldn't understand why I wanted to kill him. And when I told him, why don't you go speak to Dr. Arvind Panchanadikar, because he will tell you that in my delusion of schizophrenia, I would not want to kill myself because I'm a vampire, I'm supposed to be immortal. Why would I want to kill myself? I mean, any doctor should understand that. And that was really the basis of what allowed me to have that relationship with my psychiatrist, who then actually told the entire system around me, the people around me, that as far as I know Resh, she might jump off a roof thinking that she's going to go bat wings, but she's not going to jump off the roof wanting to kill herself because she thinks she's immortal, she can't die. And that was a very valid argument for me, you know, and for him when he was also challenging neurologists and other neurologists, because the system really sucks. It's full of politics and diplomacy between that hospital and this hospital and the ECG person and that person. And there was nothing else I could rely on, but that's when consent came in, not through the system, but through people around me. You know, when my father realized he's actually fighting for the child inside of him. He saw so much of him inside me fighting. And my mom, as a woman, was now fighting for her daughter that she fought for before, and when I had Ray's syndrome, and she realized that she was again losing that daughter. And she then asked Resh, is there anything we can do that will make it easier for you? You know, because we've seen you overcome a lot of things. And I was going through severe psychosis with epilepsy and, you know, demons having sex with me and all of that. I mean, some demons are really good looking, trust me. But I was going through all of that, and my mom couldn't figure out how to talk to me by then. But it's a simple question of consent, right? Because we live in a world where consent is not something given to kids, to women, or if you're cuckoo in the head. Because you don't ask a kid hey, can I hug you, right? You just go, hey, you're so cute. And you do that to someone who's also crazy, and you also do that to a woman. You say, oh, can I rape you? You just go and rape her. But that's where we're coming from, the topic of consent. It is not just something based in CRPD, it's based in our society, and society doesn't practice that, you know. So if you're talking about someone who's crazy and who needs consent, you're talking about all these multiple layers of what's happening in that relationship. Because legal capacity for me means I have no legal capacity in India. There are, out of 2,000 national laws, so 200 laws in India that deny me legal capacity, marriage, contract rights, none of it. I can't fly a plane, I can't sign Facebook, it's a contract right. None of it would apply to me. But then you have social capacity, cultural capacity, emotional capacity, family capacity, and I think that's where I actually want to ask you as an audience, what's your capacity when you're sitting there and listening to me? You know, what would your capacity be in hearing voices? Because then I would say, you don't hear voices, something is wrong with you, because in my culture that's natural. When I say my culture, the culture is very large, right? It talks about my practices. The East and West relationship is still such a fine line that many don't understand. And that's where the alternatives of the creatives come in, where the support system given to me at that point was when a friend actually calls up and says, Resh, I think you're possessed. And I'm on the hospital bed, and she doesn't know how to talk to me anymore. But at that point, a friend will really understand how to talk to another girl friend, not to another psychotic or not to another schizophrenic. That's what we're actually forgetting. And as a friend, she did that. She said, so I want to know who I'm talking to, you know, because I will tell you who I'm also. And that's where consent comes in from that angle. Consent comes in when Bhargavi was giving my father support on how to talk to the cops and talk to me, because the cops refused to allow the doctor to treat me when I have attempted suicide, because at that point in India, the act of suicide was a criminal offense. And they wanted my father to bribe them, which is what my father did. He had to bribe the cops just to make sure I get saved. And that really is the systematic madness that just goes on. You know, you call it the revolving door in politics, I call it the four-wall theory. It never really ends, because even in advocacy, even in disability as a discourse, it still exists. I don't know how much of social or emotional capacity I could have in a room like this, but do I expect it? I don't expect it. But you see, you can't expect me to learn about capacity, or you can't expect me to learn about the world if the world has already been denied to me, right? Which is what the system forgets. If you lock me up, and you lock me up in my home, and you lock me up everywhere else, how am I going to come out there and actually talk to you and hug you and ask you and all of that? I've been denied that reality for so long. I wouldn't know it. That's really the system and the world being stupid. And as Lavanya also said, it's, you know, the environment is crazy, and we're just products of the same environment. And you're all just mirrors for standing here looking at me. Thank you, my hair's really good.
Reshma, and thank you, Emma, for facilitating the presentation. So we will open now a round of questions. So, any questions for Reshma? A lot about this limit between consent and refusal and the law, but also it's very important to see, and also how this impacted through practitioners, but I think it's very important to see also what other way we have to support people in different situations. So in this panel we will have Fionn Fitzpatrick, which is coordinator of Geleway, a peer-led social support project in Dublin. We will have Matt Jefferson, that also has a lot of experience with PO scanning, the personal ombudsman in Sweden, and of course Reshma, who is gonna share with us the experience of the Red Door, an organization she led. So I would like to start talking about your own projects, your own experience about developing grassroots support for people with psychosocial disabilities. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about how the projects work, how they came about, how they work in practice. I don't know who wants to start. Maybe Fiona?
Yeah, I can go.
Hi. Firstly, thank you to all the speakers so far today, and to Eleanor and the team for organising this seminar. I'm really impressed with it. I've enjoyed it very much so far. So I'm the project coordinator of a peer social support organisation in Dublin called Geleway Project. We are currently a project of Mental Health Ireland. We went under them last year, having to move from our host, which was originally a community development partnership company. And that was after 10 years of support under their flag. So Geleway comes from community development roots. It was founded and established as a response in the local community to a lack of social support amongst people with self-experience of mental ill health and recovery like myself. All of us in the project have lived experience, both in terms of service use in the past and also in terms of our own journeys and our own experiences. So it's a really kind of hopeful, inspiring, empowering, wonderful place to be, not like the real world in many ways. If only, I suppose, our experiences could be more like Geleway in general. And the idea was to create a space for people to come together, to have solidarity, to support one another, and to identify their own needs and to work on achieving those. So we have everything in the project from just having a drop-in a couple of times a week where people can come in and socialise and hang out and make friends, to actual educational courses which are planned and developed with members every year. So they will cover the educational kind of need and vocational needs of people coming in the door. We have over 300 members, which is a substantial group. So obviously there's a lot of differing opinion and a lot of richness in terms of the contribution to the development of the project over the years. We also seek to get involved where we can, or at least to try and influence and shape national policy, and we do that through membership of Mental Health Reform. We're a member of their grassroots forum, and we try and kind of use their platform as well to be able to raise awareness of our needs in terms of mental health services and the need for reform. So as you can see, there's quite a few different levels to what we do. We would be very strong advocates in terms of the need for choice-based interventions that are very much human rights focused, so that in many ways the CRPD would reflect our own practices on an ethical basis within the project. I'd recommend you read more about us online. We've got a website which we try and keep up to date. You can find us on, I think it's projectgeleway.blogspot.com. I'm not a very technical person, and I also have a pretty bad memory at the moment. I'm pregnant and I'm not using it as an excuse, but baby brain is a thing. And so that's us. We are supported financially by the HSE. That their financial, the funding, I suppose, of Geleway has grown incrementally from the beginning. Initially, the HSE were approached and funded a worker. The worker was seconded from the HSE to support the development of the project, and then the local partnership company provided a worker in terms of a community development worker. And that was to kind of build those community roots. So it's a collaborative initiative. On our advisory committee over the years, we had a number of different stakeholders and partners, which have included like the City of Dublin Education Training Board. So that would be like the I suppose local educational authority for adults, because they fund a number of programs within Geleway. And we also have other groups, say for example Shine, which is I suppose, a national mental health organisation. They've had representation on our advisory group for a number of years as well. So that, at the moment, we now have, I should just say, in the last year, following that move, the community sector in Ireland took a big hit last year and the year before. In fact, it's undergoing a process of how would you describe it? I suppose restructuring, or I was going to say destructuring. Eventually, I suppose community development probably won't be, well, it certainly won't be taking the form that it has been to date. As a result, Geleway lost its primary funder, and that was a huge blow for the project. So, hence, we approached a number of other organisations to host us and manage our funding, because we are not a company limited by guarantee. We're not a charity. We don't have our own status, independent status in that way. But under a memo of understanding with Mental Health Ireland, we do have autonomy and we manage our own budget. And it's literally, we're kind of, I suppose, benefiting from their administrative supports in terms of managing public money for the project. The way we engage in peer support in Geleway, it's informal, so it takes place between human beings. They used to call it just, talking to people. Now it's called peer support. However, I'm not one for the labels, but it is quite impressive when it works. I think just giving people a space, trusting that they can actually look after themselves in that environment is key. So there's a big emphasis on just being there and knowing your limits as well. That we all, I suppose particularly when you've had your own experiences, there can be, not only is it great learning, but also, it's kind of easy to go into places that can be challenging. And just knowing what feels right for you and what feels safe for you is important. So we do some training around that as well in the project, just to give people confidence engaging in the more structured kind of peer support elements as well. We are big on RAP in Geleway in its original form, so as in the Wellness Recovery Action Plan, whereby people with their own experience deliver within the project, and I suppose many people use that as a tool for well-being. And we have a monthly discussion group called the RAP Cafe, where we come together and we kind of talk about what's going on and what kind of key issues are coming up for people that they might be looking for peer support with as well. So there's a number of different ways that we engage in peer support throughout the project, and I think ultimately one of the biggest, or one of the most recent developments for us as a project was to work with Trinity College and another peer support centre called Fionn, who are based in Nina, in terms of developing the research base or the evidence base in Ireland for peer support initiatives, so that other groups like Geleway and Fionn, who are emerging, of which there are many around the country, will have maybe a clearer pathway in terms of funding in the future. So that report was just launched back in November, and if anyone's interested in reading that research, you can access it through our website, through Mental Health Ireland's website, and a number of other sources. So, was that okay? Was that helpful at all? Good. There you go.
Okay, this is not a project, it's a regional service. But when I listen to you, I want to start a little bit otherwise. I didn't do so often, because I go around and talk about this person ombudsman around the world since Tina brought me to the United Nations in January 2006. So now in this autumn I've been in Peru, in your country, talking in the Congress, and I've been in the European Parliament in the summer and around. So I'm quite used to talk about this. But I want to, because you're talking about what I thought about things, I also written about it sometimes in some books. A little bit of my background, and because how it started before we have this service, we want peer support, because I've been working in our user survivor organization full-time for since 1988, 27 or 37, 27 years. I've been working full-time at our regional level, and we have about, in this province, Skåne, English people think it's pronounced Skåne, but it's Skåne. It's a province in the south of Sweden. We have, I think it's 12 local groups, and many of them have drop-in centers open every day. Former youth survivors employed, and others are voluntary, and some groups are smaller, but we have 4 or 5 places with a big apartment, big house of their own, open every day. So that is one of my daily job, to support this. But to start coming to the Person Ombudsman, I will start with there's a little story with a young man. His name is Erik, a Norwegian gay. I found him in the mental hospital, in the old asylum in the mid-90s. He had been there for 5 years without any break, 25 years old. Placed on a ward with old chronic patients, 70-year-olds, so he was just 20 years old. 5 years without any break. So I found him there, and he was from Norway. His mother has married a Swede, and then she died, and her real father died, and she was without parents. And I could talk with him, and I could understand only 10–50% of what he was talking about. He was so much, he had visions all the time, and he was so in such another world that you could hardly understand. I just give you an example of our conversation, which I remember. I said when he was living with me, I said, Erik, shall we go out? And he answered, it's something about the American car in Detroit. What is that answer to my question? And then I said, what do you mean, square? So that kind of very cryptic conversations we had during several years. Anyway, when I found him, he wanted to have support. He came to our drop-in center every day. He left the asylum in the evening, in the afternoon, and came back. And after half an hour, he was so clever, so he asked me, could I live with you? Couldn't I? And I said, well, I think, oh, well, but I said, and then he very quickly took my hand and said, thank you have saved my life. So what should I do? I couldn't say no, and I've saved his life. So I took him out to the hospital. They took off all the medication from him immediately. I don't know why. We didn't ask for it. They just, after 5 years on drugs, just took it away. I guess they think that now I should have the problems. So we left and moved to I had an extra room, I rent for it. So we lived there for 1 year in my apartment. So I have supported him almost day and night. And he was in another world. He was an angel. He has 2 big wings on his back. When we had breakfast, he would sometimes float to heaven, and then now he's back, he said. And they've been in heaven for some while, and he talked a lot, but he was very nice. He was really an angel, so it was no problem to have him there. But after 1 year, I found out, well, and he has no problem with taking away the drugs. And first I saw that he became, before he had this dyskinesia, I mean, a little bit stiff and these side effects. But after some couple of weeks without the drugs, he became very relaxed, very normal. He looked like a normal person. And he had no problems without drugs. Well, he was so mad anyway, so it doesn't matter. Because he was one of the most people who have been most in the other world that I have known. But if you would be for 2 hours, it's no problem to have a dialogue with a person like that. It's no problem to have it. That is why I also bring it up, because you can support, you can have a dialogue. You don't have to be in a hospital. If somebody just have a relationship with you. So we got on very well, but I thought after 1 year that this is just going on. He's not changing, he's just in the same state all the time. I said perhaps it's not the best for him to live with a bachelor, which I was at the time. He needs some more person who can have more care for him than me. And then came the psychiatric reform, and I found money exactly because of him. So one of my first big project was that we rented a hotel, a complete hotel, 5 stories, 3-star hotel. For 10 years we rented it. So I went around the world talking about this hotel for 10 years. And it was mainly because he could move to some other place, not living the rest of his life with me. And actually the Person Ombudsman was also because of him. So much is because of this Eric. So we moved to our hotel, lived there for some years, and then this was not just for living, it was also for social, a hotel is a very good place because it both give you privacy but also community, because we also have communal living and people are free. Somebody didn't want to have any contact with that person, they just wanted to have their room, but others wanted to have contact. It was just as they wanted. And he lived there, and then there came up this, the psychiatric reform in Sweden, this possibility to have a personal ombudsman. And then I thought, that is something that Eric needs. So that is really actually the reason why I applied. There was money from the parliament. It was a reform, and it would have 10 pilot projects, and they could be run by the government, or they could run by a voluntary organization, an NGO. So I had hundreds of applications, but I said one, and we got one of those 10. And Eric was the first client. I employed 2 persons as personal ombudsman. The first 2, I was the project manager, and Eric was the first client. And actually, because of this personal ombudsman, he became completely well after being away from reality for more than 10 years. It was a woman who really took him into his family, the first personal ombudsman. And suddenly, she found a house for him, so they built a house to him, a house of his own. And suddenly he just walked out of this schizophrenia. He was just like nothing has happened. Suddenly you could talk, have a normal conversation with him without any problem. After 10 years being completely away from the world, he was just like anybody else. And you don't need any psychiatric intervention for that. We helped him. And now he has a house of his own. He took a driving license for motorbike. We found his grandfather in Norway who was a millionaire. So he's a billionaire, I guess. So he's a millionaire himself. He was homeless before, but now he has a millionaire himself. So that is a good story. But then, after this came this personal ombudsman. And the personal ombudsman, to tell you a few words about that, is 5 years, from 1995 to year 2000, we had it as one of these 10 pilot projects. And then the Parliament of Sweden decided to implement all over the country, but step by step. So now we have about 600 personal ombudsman in Sweden, covering about 85% of the local municipalities in Sweden, and so it's many thousands of clients. But we had this first project for 5 years, and then when we got more money into it, I thought we had to broaden it. So I asked the family organization if they wanted to join us. And we founded a new organization called PO Skåne, Personal Ombudsman in Skåne. And we started to employ people. So now we have, working on contracts with local municipalities. So now we have about 15 Personal Ombudsman working full-time, and a director. And they have each 15 to 20 clients, so it's many hundreds of clients in 16, 17 different local municipalities. We have contracts. Some are very in big cities like Malmö, and some are in very rural area, very rural in the countryside. And this, to tell you first, I'd say I was given the definition that the personal ombudsman is one who is working to 100% on the commission of the clients only, and nobody else, like a lawyer, although it's not lawyers. Most of them we have employed are trained social workers, but there are also a few are trained lawyers also. So they are educated people, and they're working full-time to an ordinary salary. And they do only what the clients want them to do, nothing else. And they're not in no alliance with psychiatry or social service or the parents or the neighbors or whatever it is, just this relationship. And they don't do what they don't are told to do. So sometimes they have to wait for a long time. And we have to learn the new POs, we have to teach them to not to act. I mean, if they come to an apartment, everything is a mess, and they think that is dirty, and you're cooking your tea on the floor or whatever you do, don't start acting until this person wants to change something. So they have to learn not to act from the beginning, and then they start to get commissions, which could be just everything from help to get rid of the medication, from get rid of their family or get reunited with the family. It's both directions. I know one girl told her personal ombudsman, the first thing I want to tell you that nobody in my family should ever more go into my apartment. They should stop my door. That is the help I want. First of all, no one from my family should ever enter my apartment anymore. But it could be just everything. Why I now go around talking about this is that because it fits into this concept from the discussion on the CRPD and the Article 12 about replacing substitute decision-making, replacing guardianships in all kind of forms with supported decision-making, where the decision-making stays with the person. And there are some person need help to formulate them into words, first of all, and sometimes to communicate them to others. If they don't have the skill themselves, or it's just something they just want to have their peer to follow them, but sometimes they are afraid, or they are talking in such a symbolic language that nobody can understand them, or whatever. So they need to get that help. They make the decision themselves. Of course, they're not sitting isolated in a room and saying, "No, I'm making a decision." They have a dialogue with the peers, back and forth. What do you think is good? What should I do? Should I start some studying or whatever? So that is what is such an interest in this system now, the personal ombudsman system around the world, because most countries are now considering how to implement the CRPD. They don't do it, but they are at least discussing it. So there's a great interest in to have some concrete example on supported decision making, because we can have a very theoretical discussion and a human rights discussion and a legal discussion, but then people just say, "Oh, that is impossible, that is just utopia." But when you can show that it works, you have a much stronger argument. And there's such an enthusiastic response, although this is not very complicated system, it's very easy. So all around the world, I've been, most countries here in Europe, I've been in many countries many times. Here in Dublin, in Ireland, talking many times about it. And outside Europe, I've been talking about it in the United Nations and in Peru and in Chile. And there are people coming from Israel and other Japan and so wanted to look at it. But the problem with this, like all other good examples, is to find those people who start doing things, the entrepreneurs, because you will have this response, "Oh, it's very interesting, it's so fascinating," and then they do nothing. I mean, it stays at this academic level, write articles, write books, have conferences and discussions, but should we stop there? We can go on for that for years, making more articles and more conferences, more articles, but you have to start doing things. And that has only, for me, happened really until now in Norway. But there was a politician from the Social Democratic Party who listened to me 10 years ago, and he immediately said, "Can you take some hours off from this conference tomorrow and follow me to the head of the social service so we can discuss a project to start?" You need that kind of persons. That is what I know. I must meet these academic persons who think it's interesting. And not only academics, also psychiatrists and nurses who think it's very interesting, but they still continue. So that is what I'm looking for. It's not complicated. You have to start doing something, not just writing books and articles and having discussions at conferences. Start doing it. Ask for a project man. You don't have to start to build a complete system for the whole country. Start with a project, start with a small, and ask for money. I always manage funding somehow to start a pilot project. And then you can show that it works. And then you can spread it more.
Thank you very much.
So the Red Door is a creative initiative, actually. It's, how do I describe it? when we approach the government, when we want to change the laws or give me the law, the government uses this word in Hindi, it's dikha to sahi. So he will sit there with his white collar, dikha to sahi. That's how they talk to you. It means, show me your ideas. Show me on grassroots level. Otherwise, I'm not going to take your idea and put it into the law and say it's going to work. Because we were all talking about grassroots and groundwork, and we were fighting for rights, but the ministries always say the same thing. Show it to me. Don't give me this vision, Show me something that works, and I will then support it, and I will see that it finds its way over there. Keeping that in mind was also something that I realized was important when we're looking at, again, legal capacity and social capacity. Because if you give me the law that says that I can get employed in this place, and I can sign a contract and get paid for it, but if 50 people over there decide to bully me and call me names, I am still going to experience a mental health distress. So forget the law, I'm going to just leave my job and I'm going to go back home and sit. But I thought to myself, what if, screw the law, if I can convince 50 people to accept me, to let me be the way I am around them, just teach them to be human, then no law can stop me. 50 people would actually come out and stop the law from dragging me in. And that's really a better game. Because in India, you're talking about numbers. We have the largest population, it's 1.21 million people. Billion? Of course, billion. And in every square kilometer, you have 384 people. That's only a 2011 country report. 65% of our population is below 35, 50% is below 30, and these are the youth of the country, and they encompass, those numbers encompass countries by themselves, right? If you look at it, they're countries with their own political statements and philosophy, and all of us are actually mongrels. We are so mixed, we're bred with multiple cultures, Western, Eastern, Asian, it just goes on. And that has made us really different. We're very different in, every 3 years there's a generational gap that we all know now. Earlier it was 7. And I wanted to see, how do I convince these people to accept me? But what I realized happening with the youngsters is they all wanted to smoke pot or drink alcohol or engage in fun and didn't really want to have corporate work. They wanted to become, all of a sudden being a writer was a cool thing, and being an artist was a cool thing, being an actor was a cool thing. It's suddenly the creative world was a cool thing, and creativity or art and culture is the essence of almost all countries, and India has a large part of it. So it became an easy market. So it's like a social entrepreneur. It's a social enterprise. How do I actually sell myself? I wanted to sell myself as Reshma the artist or Resh the writer, not the schizophrenic who writes. So I had to find a market who will accept me that way, because being an artist is also a competition in a large population. I'm not going to enter into that market. And people, the mindset of people were, hey, all musicians are crazy. All artists are crazy. All actors are crazy. They don't point out and say that's a manic thing. Yeah, he's just done with the performance and he's high. That's how society responds to artists. So what if we were to put crazy people in the same room? Nobody would really see the difference. And that sold, and that worked, because I entered that room and then I was doing the same things. I was hopping around and some guy just comes up and says, "Did you learn parkour?" And I was like, "No, I'm just hyperactive." So we had this conversation, and like you're saying, it's just conversations, which is now a term which is peer support. And then we sit and we talk and we buy a drink or we don't buy a drink, and it's humanity that happens, right? And with that dialogue, people wanted to know about your experience, because they're not really thinking about mental health. If you have any awareness campaign and you have mental health, nobody wants to walk inside that campaign. They don't want to walk inside the door. Are you crazy? Why are you walking inside there? Even if you're a psychology student, they're going to ask you that. And that's what the system does. They are good salespeople. They know what to buy and who to buy and how to do it. And I was always fascinated with the stock market because I was fascinated with numbers. And I thought, how do I also buy people to my side of the coin? I'm not asking for your money, but I'm just asking you to accept me. So we use a lot of creativity in our work. It's a creative initiative that questions the idea that all of us are mad or normal in our own unique way. It's just that it's how you define it. And that definition really relies on yourself or the society you're into. And if you were to go out there and convert that society, then all of you are converters. You know? And how do you create converters? Because it doesn't require funds, because we've never had funds. We've had like, in the first 6 months I got the seed grant from Korea, a well-known feminist organization. That was just $1,000 US. It's nothing for 6 months. After that was a fellowship through my mentor organization, Bapu Trust, that was also using art-based therapy and into community intervention. That was about 75,000 rupees for 6 months. I still had to pay my room rent and all of that. But what I was doing was, I want to sell myself. You know, I would come up with stuff like, hey, pimp me, I'll give you a lap dance. And be like, but I didn't say pimp, of course. I said, I want to sell myself from a positive note. Will you buy me? And people would think I'm talking crazy. I said, I am talking crazy. I have a label for it. I've got the legal rights for it. So they wouldn't understand what I'm saying. And that just became a conversation by itself, because youngsters like to be challenged. You know, if I were to go up and tell them that, like, yeah, well, I'm crazy too. So we would have this competition on who's crazier. And that was a wonderful thing, you know, on who's really crazier. Everybody's like in the market for something. Then by the second year, when the funds, my fellowship stopped, I actually just utilized my friend circles, you know. It takes time for people to really understand how something like this can work. And I just relied on friends, because friends were coming back into my life after maybe 10 years, and they wanted to find out what I was doing and why I disappeared. So I really told them my story. What really helped me was, in 2011, there was a documentary made on my story. So I was forced to be in the public world. I was invited for talks, for TEDx's. So the name was already there, and I couldn't run away from it. So the best thing for me to do is just use it, and to just sell myself, because nobody else is going to do it, you know. And then I just did that, and it was more of a barter system happening. A lot of college students would want to intern, and they would like the idea of what the Red Door is doing and ask me what would I require from them. And they would actually coordinate with other NGOs that had maybe young children who have run away from home, boys who have suffered domestic violence, girls who have had sexual violence. We would go over there and we would use art to help them understand what child rights are, or what human rights are, what animal rights are. And in doing so, they form a relationship with me and my intern. And then they ask, and that's again conversations, you know, because they're curious about why a woman like me is out there doing stuff like that. I'm not having a corporate job. So I tell them, I ran away from the mental asylum. And they're like, really? But these are kids, so they love stories. So there's a lot of storytelling that's actually happening. Storytelling, art, drama, writing, acting, martial arts. I'm a trained martial artist, so I also use martial arts. We use any form of creativity to just get people talking. Because in India you have art-based therapists that came into the system, and they cost a lot. Even today I can't afford an art-based therapist for myself. It's the same. Experientially speaking, if I go in and I do one session of art therapy, I'm left with 1 week to deal with the side effects of that art therapy. But when I looked at it from an artistic point of view, as an artist, I'm always sketching, I'm always doodling, I'm always talking, I'm always cracking jokes, I'm always blah, 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 blah. So it's constant. And I like what Jung and Freud was actually, there's something said about Jung and Freud, that they suffered from a creative illness. And at first I said that, you know, maybe we suffer from a creative illness, therefore the only treatment is creativity, not medications. So now I'm kind of keeping it a lot more easier, but illness was still a problem for me, right? I don't want it to be an illness. But okay, maybe in the first few years I got to deal with that. And I say, well, no, you only give me music, and you will only give me brushes, and you will only give me a mime, and you will only give me movies, and you will only give me basketball. So maybe that would be a better option. And like that, we just spread organically. There were people just calling me to have Red Door sessions in their organizations. They wanted to talk about mental health, but they realized their organizations or offices or colleges themselves had stigma. Nobody wanted to use the word, and since they could use my documentary to first sell it, it really made it easier for me. So just go there, talk, give them the skills, teach them how they can use it, because creativity is free. And nobody knows that. You know, we think creativity is something you need to get a degree for, but it's free, and it's in each one of us. And we actually became known as art-based therapy outside of the cabin, because we were actually teaching lay people. We would go into parks, into nightclubs, name it. We were in every public space, just talking to people, dancing, you know, cracking jokes, and by getting them to paint. 80-year-old men were painting, and they were saying, you know, we've never done this for decades of our life. The last time I painted, I was 10 years old, and I didn't know I could have a conversation with someone until you told me. So it was just this human bond being formed. Forget schizophrenia. It's just that human bond. I mean, the human bond is formed in half an hour in that creative act. And then when dialogue is formed, people are more open to what you want to sell them. And that's how we got converting people. So you have doers, you have talkers, you have walkers. So everybody who comes under the red door and who've understood it become the red door. You are the red door. You become the spirit of what we are trying to do. It's art and activism. And we just collaborate with different organizations, whether they are creative-based, whether they are based with disability, mental health. We're just open to everybody, because that's the world I want to influence, right? I don't want to come in a conference and keep talking to the same people who already know me. I want to influence those people who will then accept me, which is where we'll start selling. Then we went on further, and now this is actually our 5th year. We're still not funded. I'm actually on an Ashoka Fellow stipend that's only giving me my living expenses. But like I said, it's a barter system. So every time people would call me for conferences, I would actually tell them to book my flights for a couple of days more. I'll just make friends with people, because in a schizophrenic state, you're just good in having random conversations. So I have conversations, I make friends. You look at the positive side of me of how I can use my symptom to talk to people, and without telling them I've got schizophrenia, because as a woman you can be sexually taken advantage of, which that has also happened like in my past. But then I would make friends, stay in their houses, talk to them, spend 3 days using their space, or I've also babysat for people. I've also pet sat for them. And in doing so, they just fly me, they pay for my stay, and I just kind of have to do what I gotta do. And I also use technology, actually, because we started with a peer support group online on Facebook. Because a lot of youngsters sit behind their computer desk or their gadgets with anonymous accounts. So that became something I also wanted to get into, because I actually volunteered for these kind of stuff. When internet just came out, IRC chats and stuff. So I thought that was also a good angle to get individuals to influence the mind and those youngsters through that avenue. So we use social media. I mean, we don't really have a large following, because every member is really profiled. So we have 1,800 members in our closed group on the internet. So every member, what I mean by profile is we have a lot of quacks and anti-gay activists and stuff like that. So we talk about sexuality. Many of our members have alternate sexuality. They're cross-dressers, they're transgenders. They are straight women who are having affairs. They are, all of these stereotype labels that society kind of boxes people in. So we have a lot of these members who just thought the Red Door was a place that you felt belonged, because that was something I think many of us with schizophrenia or mental health distress and labels have been trying to look for. Can I feel belonged in the world? And if I can't, then can I just create that place of belonging where I can rave and rant? You're living in a stressful environment, in a stressful world. Even though I'm the co-founder, I would like to go into my group and I just want to bitch. And I just want to talk and I want to complain, and can I create that for myself? And can this be a culture that people embrace, which comes with respect? So we are pro-CRPD, we try to implement everything that can be implemented through CRPD. So we follow the 3 A's, which is awareness, accessibility, and accommodation. And we have the 3 E's, I forgot what the 3 E's are. One is environment. And it actually had to study the timeline of recovery, which I call the IRS. It's the IRS is, what is the IRS? I forgot the IRS. Sorry, it's something recovery model. And it took on the timeline of how you can actually recover faster if you actually put in creativity into the person's life. And I basically was doing that by studying my timeline or somebody else's timeline. And its time's up, but right now in the 5th year, we're now putting all of this practice into a school. So in a physical space is where we have, we have a program in school called STAB, Stand Tall Against Bullying. And it's at a changemaker school. So I work as an interventionist, teaching boys and girls about consent, how to respect each other, and they accept the fact that I'm from a different planet and they don't question me. Which is lovely, and that's why we need to keep the imagination of kids alive, because they accept people like us. And we also have now physical support groups. So the girls in school, like I'm saying, it's an organic effect. The girls just started their own support group. The boys have now also started their own support group, and they're just in the age group of 12 to 16. And now past Red Door interns and volunteers are actually coming back to the school and volunteering their time, trying to find out how they can work with me for a longer period of time. Thank you.
Another quick round before we open the floor. I just wanted to ask you, in your work, through support, and in general, the work you do of awareness. So we have a couple of questions in the morning around what we do when somebody's experiencing severe distress. So the so-called crisis. So, and I think you have experience working with providing support. So we would like to, it would be very nice to listen from you how we provide support in those situations without taking away legal capacity.
Well, I have been doing this for 35 years. I mostly be together with mad people, so that is my normal environment. The normal people are very seldom. I meet just like conference and this, like this, I meet some normal people. But I know all these kind of situations. I mean, like I talk about like suicidal situations, aggressiveness, people who disappear and you have to go try to find them. I have a model, but I don't have the time to present here, but I've written it in some books. It's also in a new book published in England in August this year, a little part of it. It's called the jungle model. And the main, I can't explain that now because it takes too long time, but the main point is that you accept the reality of the person. That is, I call the jungle is a madness. And the person is in the jungle. And what psychology tries to do is to map the way in, but they don't have any much to say about how to get out of it. Psychiatry tries to build the walls around the person in the middle of the jungle. But what you need is a companion, who perhaps not know the way, but who can follow you. And what I do then is you cannot draw this person out from the jungle. He or she is there in the middle. You cannot try to. Everybody has tried, no, it's impossible. These people are very strong people. They are called weak psychics. They are very strong psychics. You can even move them 1 millimeter. They are very, very convinced about the reality they have. So it's better to go where they are. So that is what I'm doing. whatever you are, if you're involved in some fight with the galaxies, the universe, I take part in that. If you're involved in the Secret Service, police, I take part in that, and so on. And just give one example of supporting that is another young man who is also one of the most crazy I know. But he's a good. We have one of my own other purposes is a theatre group. We have a big theatre group with people with mental health problems, very severe, and also with homeless people, drug addicts, prostitutes. Everybody is acting, and we're acting on the ordinary city theatre for full houses every evening. People are paying 15, 20 euros for tickets, and we sold out immediately. And we have a professional director and so on. And he is one of our good actors, but he is himself convinced that he's the king of Denmark, president of Sweden. He also owns the banks, he's the head of the police, and he's very convinced of all this, and he has big fights all over the galaxy. And sometimes he asks me, because he has to repair the cosmos universe every day, some galaxies. And it takes him several hours, and it's a big burden for him to so he just asked me if I could take care of some galaxies. And then I said yes. And tell the name of this galaxy, can you take care of them for me? Oh yes, I said I can take care of them. I don't know what to do, but I said I can take care of them. And then it came the next day and said, oh, you're doing a very good job. And I'm very relieved to that. And everybody in the whole universe is now very, and you're the second one in the universe after me now. So I go into that without lying. But I'm not lying. For example, people are hearing voices and they are telling me, they also hear voices. I don't say, I hear this. Because I don't hear it, so I don't lie in that way. But I say, you have a special gift. I don't have it. I cannot hear. I try to hide it, but I cannot hear it. You have this gift, I don't have that gift. That's okay. Anyway, so that is one way I support them. And about aggression, for example, that is very easy. A very easy method. It is so easy, so I don't practice it. The most easy to have a person who is very aggressive and very violent is to agree with everything what this person says. Because it's very hard to be angry if you're agreeing. If you start agreeing with it, that you're right about that. This person starts to be angry because you can't be angry with somebody who's agreeing with you. And I can assure you, it works 100%. Just agree. And this person stopped being angry because I will see how anger goes down. Because one example is a young man was traveling around south of Sweden. He was persecuted by somebody. So he will have to move around from city to city. And he has also a kind of multiple personality in that way that he was himself, but in different ages. So suddenly he was 2 years old, suddenly he was 82 years old, suddenly he was 15 years old. 1 hour later he was 42 years old. And he could be very aggressive and very strong. And he was very aggressive one time. I just started with this in the corridor, agreeing with everything. And he was very strong. And after a while, we were sitting on the floor, both of us, talking. And as people, I can just see his anger go down, down, down. And after 20 minutes, so he just went up and, thank you, and he went away. It's a very easy method. Why don't you practice that? Suicidal is, of course, a bit more difficult. Suicide is I have done all kind of things to stop suicide, even knocking people down. We filled one member with tablets. One of our members had all of the medicines in his pocket and just threw it into his tea. And he was in an acute situation committing suicide. He just planned it and he just fell down and slipped. So I do whatever I had to do. I mean, you have to tackle the situation when it is there. You cannot, and do what you can. And you have to be creative. And one thing last thing I want to say is that it's impossible to have a conversation with just everybody. I mean, people who are so mad and so very far away in that way, talking such a symbolic language, but I always succeed to have a communication with them. Even if it takes some time. You just start. First you have to answer. If they're talking very strange things, you cannot understand them, you have to answer the very strange things. You don't know what your dialogue is about, because you're talking things you don't understand at all. But after a while, this person collect himself or herself and became more understandable. So if you just keep on with the dialogue, this person came down and started to talk the more normal way. Normal way, at least a way you can understand. Well, that is just some ideas. I think it's nice no impossible persons, and no persons that you cannot reach. There's no person that you can have a dialogue, and no person that you cannot get some idea what to do and convince them. You just have to be creative.
I would agree with a lot of what Max is saying there. I think when it comes to, and I did hear that question earlier on from the woman talking about her, I think it was a family member over in Boston who had been having a really tough time, and as had the family. And I think, I just want to clarify, for people who don't know me, I've been in the services, I've been locked up in the services, I've escaped from the services, and I've survived the services. But that does give you a unique perspective on your own experience and your own life. I think it helps to connect to others, particularly when they're in crisis. And that's why I think peer support type initiatives are really important, because it's an equal place to be. Everyone's had their own experiences, and they might be quite different actually. So there isn't a presumption of, well, I've been there and I've got the t-shirt and I'm going to tell you what you need to do. What you have is an appreciation of the need for autonomy and choice and respect of your wishes. My own experience through Gateway and what we do there in terms of supporting people who are in crisis, and it's come up in the project on numerous occasions. We have a duty of care as an organisation, and one that is publicly funded, to make sure that certain procedures, I suppose, are followed. But they have to be, and they are, in line with our ethos, which has been developed by our membership. And that means that it is informed. So let's say, for example, talking about the issue of suicide, or people who are considering or planning harming themselves. We would have we would use, I suppose, an open dialogue type approach with people. Generally, it would be the person coming seeking support actually, so it's not having to go in and do some kind of intervention. Someone would come and they'd ask for help with this. And then it's sitting down and looking at what's going on in the person's life that's leading to that level of overwhelm, connecting with them on a human level, looking at parts of their life where things are also going well. And I suppose one of the things that Gateway does quite well is it helps to foster and build hope amongst the community that is Gateway. So sometimes we have to kind of hold the hope for people too. It's almost like having a candle there, so even when you're not feeling it yourself, there's a community there, there's a group of people who have your back, that care about you. And that does give people a lot of hope, and it does help, I suppose, help them to take steps to protect and look after themselves. But I think suicide is a big issue, isn't it? Because I lost an extremely close friend and fellow traveller last year to suicide, and that was after many years of battling not only his own challenging experiences in terms of life and his thinking and different experiences he's had in terms of mental health, but it was also that of the services and this huge fear of, again, having to go back into the hospital, again having police involved, again having no choice, again being, subjected to cruel and I suppose it's been described as violence, torture. And he decided that he wasn't prepared to keep doing that, and that was his choice. On a personal level, and this isn't as the coordinator of Gateway, it's not that I would be an advocate of suicide, but I am an advocate of choice. And I think that sometimes people decide to end their lives, and it's extremely sad and tragic for those of us that are left behind, but it's their choice as well to do that. And I know it's quite a radical thing to say, because and it raises a lot of red flags probably for services when they're thinking about risk and risk management. But ultimately, that is a person's choice to do that. I think we need to respect that and look at that, because although euthanasia is something that might be considered in certain aspects of disability to be something which is acceptable in mental health, it's not, because of, as Tina was describing, the conflagrance between mental capacity and legal capacity and all of those blurred boundaries. However, in the work that we would do on a day-to-day basis, where we're really supporting people to find their and build their pathways out of overwhelm and emotional distress with the support of other people. And rarely do we hear of a member who's actually been successful, I suppose, in taking their own life, or have chosen to do that. So we're very fortunate there. We get a lot of supports from groups like Pieta House as well. Pieta House is they provide quite intensive psychotherapeutic supports to people who are suicidal and thinking about ending their lives. And they've come in and met with members, and we have a great relationship with them, so that if somebody was really feeling in distress and feeling that they were at risk, it's just a phone call if that person wants to Pieta, and an appointment will be made the next day for them, or later on that day, depending. We use something called Assist. I don't know if you guys, it might be something that's just in the UK and Ireland. It's kind of like a safety checklist, really, that you work through with a person to see how they're going to keep themselves safe, or do they want to, and explore what the issues are. Sometimes it might be as simple as a phone bill that can't be paid, and it's on top of a series of disappointments and stressors and so on and so forth, and just looking at what is actually the challenge behind that. Like I said, Gateway is autonomous as well in the way that we really promote that people self-direct, I suppose, their own experience, not only through our project, but also in terms of their use of the mental health services. So it isn't up to me to pick up the phone and speak to a key worker or a social worker. I would never do that. What happens is a conversation with the person, and then asking them to identify who maybe they would get benefit from getting support from, and who would they like to contact. Recently there was a member who was coming in and meeting with me and seemed quite upset, and seemed that she was quite overwhelmed at the time. And I asked her very directly, do you want me to contact the services with you? Would you like to do that, or would you like me to be able to do that? Would that help? And she said, actually no, that would not help, that is not what I would want. But just being able to pop in and have a chat, is helpful. And being able to meet up with other members. So she came up with her own kind of safety plan, if you like. So when working with people who are in distress, it's coming back to that human relationship we were talking about, that connection, just talking to people. And if somebody is experiencing some other kind of reality, you can still have a conversation about these things. My brother is a voice hearer, and we use kind of voice dialoguing methods of engaging with his voices, and we do that with in the project. Some members like to kind of do voice dialoguing, and I found the training was really helpful. So that's another approach that we kind of are exploring at the moment. Like I said, also the Wellness Recovery Action Plan, there's a crisis plan in there as well. So for people who have done that and benefit from it and use it, you can often have a conversation with people around, what does your rap say, and how do you feel you're on that? Or I think these are all methods for the person themselves, a kind of self-management tool. So the emphasis is really putting the responsibility back to the person, making sure that you're not stealing their power, and that they have support and companionship. As Matt said as well, companionship is key. I was just having a conversation with a colleague there during one of the breaks around what I would do in the event of the pregnancy if I were to become unwell, because of course for a long time I was told, well, geez, if you got pregnant, you're probably going to have a massive relapse. It didn't happen yet. I still have a little while to go, but I do have something called an advance directive in place, and I'm sure some of you have heard of that, whereby my will and preferences are clearly spelled out. Unfortunately, it doesn't have a legal basis in this country. I hope that will change over time, but certainly it is there, and I think it's something that can be, I suppose, a helpful tool for people. Matt's mentioned aggression in terms of interventions or our experience within the project. We have never had really any issues with that. And I think the HSE finds that hard because we don't have people coming in wrecking the place. We don't have people having fights with each other. You know, members develop their charter of rights and responsibilities, and if people are kind of, you know, not being respectful towards each other, they'll say that to each other. So it's not rocket science. It's just dealing with human beings and without the labels for change, which is just really nice. Yeah, so hopefully that covers a bit from our perspective anyway.
Before I leave, can I just say one word about suicide, because that is a discussion if you have the right to commit suicide or not. A lot of my friends have committed suicide, so it's very sad, and my former girlfriend committed suicide in the psychiatric acute ward. So it's not a safe place. No. Forced treatment is not safe. Psychiatry is not safe. A lot of people commit suicide within psychiatry. But I think it's a very academic question, because if people want to commit suicide, you cannot either forbid it or not, because they just do it. I mean, they don't have to tell anybody. So if you forbid it, it's meaningless. I tell my members, if you plan to commit suicide, don't tell me, because then you put the guilt on me, and then I will stop you with all means. So if you will do it, just don't tell me. Otherwise, I will stop you, because then I will choose to live on with this guilt. But I hadn't done perhaps what I could have done. So why should they put this burden on me? You could commit suicide without telling it to somebody. Of course, it's possible.
So when people actually come to us or for any support, it's mostly the caregivers that come, and most of the time we're actually giving support to the caregivers. The different stories that have happened, one was where a girl who came in with her boyfriend who became the father, and she had a lot of aggression, she was not taking her medications, she wrecked my room up, but I actually allowed it to happen because I told her boyfriend that, you know, when two girls are having a pajama party, this is what we're going to do. She's going to be jumping naked on my bed, and I'm just going to be painting away. So it was almost painting a different picture for the caregiver to just allow it to happen. So sometimes, you know, because it's situational also, we also have to use concepts from shamanism. For those of you who read up on shamanism or spirituality, so there's also spiritual counseling or death counseling. For someone like her who came, she had issues with the dark goddess, and I have the altar of the goddess Kali in my room. She started freaking out, and then she destroyed it. And then she realized what she was doing, and she apologized frantically. And I said, "That's okay. You're also dark. You're also a goddess. It's okay." You know. So I think that's what friends do. It doesn't matter whether I've known you for 50 years or for just like 5 hours or 5 minutes. But when you put yourself in that friendly atmosphere, you kind of allow it to happen. So in her case, it was really situational because then I had to go to her house in Bombay, in a different city, and live with her for 36 hours. After that, I needed my time off because I was actually walking her through her. She was seeing ghosts, and she wanted to know whether I also saw ghosts because she knew that I also experienced stuff. So it's just being there, walking in with them, you know, with their imagination or whatever it is. And buying time off. You're really buying time off. Because she refused to stay in, she was going to be sent to another institution that was actually quite, was giving her consent. It was one of those good institutions really, but she refused to stay over there despite the father saying, you know, connecting with her. And I said, just use her delusion. If she was saying she wants to go to Mexico, and if you think that she's not going to stay here, just tell her, like you would explain to a child, what are the things you need to go to Mexico? You know, you need a passport, you need a visa, you you need a job, you need 3 years of etc, etc, etc. Explain all of this to her, and that's where choice comes in. She understands what her choices are, what she needs to do, and you've actually bought yourself 3 years. And 1 year after that, she's forgotten Mexico, she's got some boyfriend in Goa now. You know, so it really changes when choice is given. In another situation where the family member actually committed suicide after meeting me, was an interesting turn of events, because the mother actually came to me first when I realized the mother needed more help, because she did not want the daughter in the life anymore, and the daughter was being given ECT institution. And I was trying to tell the mom that this isn't a place you want her to be, and she doesn't need ECT, but that's not something I can tell. It's a choice that the mother has to realize. In doing so, I'm just guiding the mother into being a better mother. You know, I asked her, the girl who was 2 years older than me was actually acting out at many levels every time she came back home. And I just realized, and I asked the mother, you know, when was the last time you gave her a hug and told her that you love her? She says, no, we do. Like when we drop her off at the institution, we tell her we care for her. I said, well, yeah, in her mind, she thinks that the only way you love her is when you're going to lock her up in there. You know? So we're just guiding them into realizing what they're doing, and they don't really see what they're doing. So we were teaching them how to love better. If that's what, you know, that's what human relations are, right? We teach us showing them what can be done better, or and also choice, because when she called up and said the daughter such and such event took place, and the father couldn't take it, but the mother was really okay, you know, when I asked her about the death, and I said, well, are you happy? And she says, yes. I said, then what's the problem? She says, well, society, I said, screw society. This is your daughter, it's not society's daughter. It's time you stand up for her now that she's dead. You know, so it's always situational, right? It's as the family also. And here the stronger player, here's the mother. And just trying to work with her story and what she thinks of her daughter, because I couldn't work with the daughter. It was the mother who came to me first. In another turn of events, the mother said that, you know, I want my son to also, I don't know whether he's talking about shamanism, but I just want him to talk to you. I said, okay, fair enough, because the mother believes in, she's from Australia, but she believes in Buddhism and stuff. And at that point, you're just helping the mother realize that trust your instincts. Just tell your son that this is what you believe in and that you don't think it's an illness. Maybe he might just take it off you if he starts to realize that you really care for him and you're not trying to lock him inside. This was really online on Facebook, just by about 3 days of messaging with her. She finally just connected me to her son, and we were just having a conversation. I never really played an interventionist with him. We were just friends. You know, we would talk about my voices, he would talk about his voices, about popularity, about girls, about boys. That's really what it is. And in doing so, after 1 year, his mom says, you know, now he's saying Gibran is his middle name. I said, well, does that make you happy? And she's like, well, yes. I mean, he's learning to see himself differently. You know, so yeah, just getting people to understand what their relationships are with each other. And sometimes you have to be creative, and sometimes you have to just understand where your limitations are, or where the family's limitations are, and who is it you're really working with? Is it really the person with the disorder, or is it really the family member? And that's really important.
Thank you for this panel, honestly. Let's open the floor. Questions? I would imagine there are going to be a few.
Hello folks, my name's Colin Dardis, though you've probably already figured out which one of the two I am. We're from Poetry NI up in Belfast. Together, Geraldine and I, we run open mics, poetry workshops, readings, competitions. We print online and digital, and what we try to do is create a platform for poetry and bring that out into the world. We don't work exclusively with mental health service users, but that is part of the dialogue that we want to try and create. Through the book Mike Night that we've been running for 5 years, we get a lot of people coming that have shared their own stories, and they find poetry therapeutic, cathartic, but they also enjoy the community aspect as well. Poems that we are going to read today is just from our own personal experiences of dealing with mental health and mental health hierarchy, let's say. If you think that we are going to be the light comic relief at the end of the conference, I'm afraid some of these poems are quite dark. So brace yourself. I'll be reading a few and I'll pass over. So let's start. The first one's called Holiday. If a change is truly as good as rest, then I will holiday amongst my rearranged room. Approach furniture at new and exciting angles and stare at slightly different shadows on the walls. I'll stay on this retreat for so long that there will be no need to take snaps. Just let the perpendiculars and the parallels ingrain into my view. There's no post office on this island, so excuse the lack of postcards, or all the phone lines wilted in a recent storm. Some days I venture out on a little boat made of linen and springs, and manage to pull the night with me in my undertow, the captain of my ship, the manager of this hotel, the only guest this season. The second poem, I'm not too sure whether to do it or not because it's quite odd. A large part of me dealing with my mental health when I was at my worst was really just trying to create a good day and what it is to have a good day. If I can get up and get dressed, if I could get showered, and I've done something constructive. I've had a good day. It doesn't really matter what that has followed. Or if I wash the dishes, I can do the recycling. It's a good day, maybe I'm getting better. So this poem, it came to me when I was in the shower, and just how much of a miracle it was really for them just to be able to actually do the whole process and the different convolutions that took. So I'll read some of it. It's called Schism. Gone fleetingly is the unholy hall as the salvation of sunbeam crusades through the bathroom window, giving me enough hope to turn off the shower and exit the flexible sanctuary of heart-kissing water. Side note, I'm sure you've all had days when you just want to stay under the shower in the mornings and don't go anywhere else. Gone fleeing is the doubt, always at the peripherals of every activity, and the movements through bogged hours, with trigger-happy black crayons shading in all the dimensions until only a monochrome of I remains. The toil is just the toil, but today it is a tool of empowerment, a signal that if one can wash and dry, then one must be unstoppable. Crashing through the myriad of microcosms that make up one life, and tying wool around the saplings to form a map. You can't dry anything with wet hands. My hands that have been drenched with the blood of myself, saturated from 100-litre suicides and every bad decision plastered over these walls. But now there is sunlight to behold. My eyes that have known no beauty for so long were asked for lenses to behold such erotica of the non-flesh. Every ray, unmatchable flicker of energy bouncing will be as fresh as an unsullied lover's tongue inside my mouth, as I welcome her saliva to mingle with mine inside the pot of humanity. O little schism, brave and majestic against the skylight of choking cloud blundering in your way, today I salute you with my being and lay a testimony to your fortitude. I must be the living temple. Next poem I've read a few times in poetry readings, and it seems to resonate with people that have been through a similar experience. It's not really preachy, but it's just my own point of view. It's called Finding Yourself. It's really about me finding myself. Life isn't to be found during that year out in Australia. You're not going to find your sorrowful Fiji in Ireland. You won't have an epiphany about your childhood or backpacking through Middle Europe, no matter how cheap the interrail tickets are. An explanation of your existence will not be here for you on your return, because life doesn't come gift wrapped, though sometimes you have to peel away a few layers and find out what's really underneath. Your perception of yourself goes beyond the bathroom mirror. What matters is how you're reflected in the hearts of others. Life is when we're not afraid to act to regain lost time, to seize the moment instead of just counting days spent getting by. It's being part of something bigger than yourself. Anything that feeds the need to join with people and communicate. It's in your mother's eyes, your father's grip, knowing that you should cherish them when still alive. It's here in everyone, however you want to call it, this essence of being, your heart, your soul, your mind, your well-being. It's in the breaths you take as you listen to this poem. Life is in every decision we make, whether right or wrong. Responsibilities we take on as a direct result of our actions. And the happiness we find from being able to be accountable for ourselves and say, this is me, as I am. And no one can deny this or take it away. There are days when you may not like yourself, when you may feel you don't have all the answers. Here's a secret. No one does. The real secret is in sharing a little bit of knowledge that you have gleaned so far from life, from building a network together of what we all know, and then a discernible path will emerge. And we'll follow that, brothers and sisters, right through to the end. I'm going to read one more poem and then I'm going to hand over to my partner Geleway. In the poetry workshops and the readings that we do, sometimes people come to us, they've never been to an event before, they've never shared their poetry in any kind of public platform before, and it's really great just to witness people getting up and having that bit of empowerment and using that platform to tell their story, whether it is own life or they are a service user or just their own experiences. A lot of people talk about the kind of medication that they're on and the struggles that they've gone through. And this poem kind of derives a little bit from that. It's inspired by the inside of my own antidepressant packet. It's called Prescription. Please read all of this poem carefully before you start taking poetry. Keep this poem. You may need to read it again. Recommended dosage. Take at least once daily or as required. Do not skip doses or discontinue unless directed by your local poet. What poetry is and what it is used for. Poetry belongs to a group of medicines called literature, or literary art. It works by enlivening the brain and embodying the soul, taking other medications. You may continue to take poetry while taking other medication, such as prose, drama, music, dance, and artificial art, etc. Driving and using machines. Poetry may make you feel extraordinary. Do not operate heavy machinery when under the influence of poetry. If you take more than you should, it is not possible to overdose on poetry. If you forget to take poetry, if you forget the dose, make up for it as soon as you can. Please refer to an anthology in emergency situations. Possible side effects. Warning, side effects that may occur when taking poetry include wider imagination, inspiration, education, wonder, enlightenment, euphoria, the propagation of thoughts, the stirring of memories, intrigue, curiosity, the desire to write, spontaneous filling of notebooks, late night conversations, visits to the dictionary, knowledge, an aversion to cliches, empathy, and an interest in open mic nights in your local area. Some patients have reported an increased need to go to the library. If this symptom persists, please refer to your librarian. Contact your local poets immediately if you experience any of the following: ennui, apathy, discouragement, melancholy. Whoa. What poetry contains. The main active substances of poetry are language, rhythm, sounds, empathy, metaphor, cadence, form, rhyme, simile, allusion, alliteration, adjournment, and imagery. For a full list of ingredients, see a university professor. Storage. Store in a cool, dry bookcase. Once open, you may continue to reuse poetry repeatedly. Expiration date, never. Thank you very much, folks.
Thank you very much for asking us to be here. It's brilliant. I didn't know he was going to do a funny poem. Otherwise, I'm going to make you go first, second. We also do work with the Northern Ireland Mental Health Arts and Film Festival. We run workshops and we do different things with them. And their ethos is tackling stigma one conversation at a time, and it's grown over the past 4 years from being a 2-day festival to last year we ran over the full month, and we included all 6 counties in Northern Ireland, and we're growing again this year, and we're starting to get funding and things. So there is good things happening with creativity and mental health in Northern Ireland, and we're very happy to be part of it. The poems that I'm going to read are partly my own experiences with mental health, and as a service user and as a carer, because I've cared for my mum and my mum has also cared for me. And this first one is called Therapy. She doesn't like couches, especially leather ones. Siesta beyond your welcome and experience the loathsome peeling of exposed skin, akin to the slow rip of a band-aid to reveal an unhealed wound. And yet here she is, stretched full length, legs crossed at the ankles, and a hypnotic voice urges from a cavernous beard, take me back. Slowly from the compartment of her mind she pulls a memory, unfurls it like a ruby red rug, follows the path to the depths of her childhood. It's 4 p.m. when she realizes you're late. The uniform laughter of the bus stop turns caustic in her ears. Quietly she slips from the group to the phone box sanctuary, lifts the receiver, connects to conjoined sobs, hangs up without a word, dials 3 little digits for an operator to inform her an ambulance is on its way. As she exits to the low groan of late afternoon traffic, the entire universe seems to be packed into her school satchel and pulls down on her shoulders. Realizing she is only a mile from her home, she begins to run but knows the battle is over before it's begun as blue flashing wheels come in waves, then halt, envelop her. Looking round, she sees a paramedic motion for her to climb in. Like a failed criminal, she is known to them. They arrive at her home to find it locked up, blinds down. Breaking in is like waking a sleeping child. Soft screams seep from the shattered window. Entombed in the ambulance, her mother reaches out to hands folded near her navel, as if searching for some umbilical defibrillator to attach to her chest, restart her petrified heart. As tear-swollen lips slur, I didn't want to die today. The daughter's inner child screams, neither did I, but outwardly smiles. It's okay. Everything will be okay. The second one is called The Great Compression, and it's just a small little poem about my own experience of sitting with depression. I don't often read it because it's not a favourite poem of mine, but it's in here. My body has become your lair. Feasting on my energy, you feed. become strong, lick at battle wounds barely healed from our last encounter. Panther black, crouched and ready for attack, you creep towards my mind. I know you have arrived when you insert your animal head perfectly inside mine. One creak of your neck locks us in for the ride. When I look through your feral eyes, the world becomes sepia. I believe I can see above and beyond everything into nothing. This is called Poetry at 5, and it's one from a set of poems directly associated with me and my mum. Who opens the curtains in my room? I do when you get up. Dark rooms are infused with sadness, I inform you. Two of us dwell in this house, both living in the half-shadows of half-truths. What I really want to say is this pitch black room is a physical representation of what you have become. I open the curtains in hope the heat of nature's sunlight will stream a heal-all army into you. Resuscitate your heart, shrivel the cobwebs in your conscience, unclamp the life-sucking demons attached to your bones. Instead, I wish you good night, the ritual complete. I also write a lot about things that impact on mental health, and I think a lot of people think of ill mental health, but everyone has a certain degree of mental health, and I firmly believe in the majority of cases that you have some power and you have some responsibility over that. And this poem, I've written a couple of poems about this, but this poem in particular is about me taking myself out of a situation that caused me to have very, very high levels of anxiety after this particular episode. And I think self-care is very important. It's called Room. This room is where we sat, hands wrapped around mugs of tea, mouths bound to your lemon drizzle cake and town talk, never breaching boundaries of ourselves, where we spun stories and tying threads together, found we were cousins as well as friends. This is the room where I received my first hug from a familiar stranger, my hard frame pressed against your flesh, fingers testing a white pan loaf for freshness. You were just out of the oven, warm to the core. This is the room where we checked ourselves in the mirror one last time, hair all strands in place, lipstick straight. You made me one of the girls. This is the room where we found him pacing, hyped up more than usual, an animal, snorting, "Where the fuck were you?" I said on the phone the child was sick, you crying on instinct. We left as soon as you called. Where is he? What have you done with him? This is the room where I, welded to your lino, watched you hold your baby boy like a shield about your face, as blows battered your fresh bred skin amid screams of "No, Daddy, no, stop." This is the room I returned to, found you a blooming rainbow of bruises falling into the quiet, your son wrapped tight to your chest. This is the room where your family found you on the edge of broken. I knew they'd take you home, try to love you back to freshness. This is the room where he dropped on one knee. You accepted him for better or worse, as long as you both would live. This is the room where I last saw you. Stone Mother. It's easy for you to leave her. My mind is sifting for sense in your words, wants to know how you could deal them out when I have been her prime carer for over half my life. Instead, admit, I've cried every day since I moved out. Yes, but it's easy because you are far away. Static words crowd the line. You want to know if I'm still here. I ask about your impending weekend away. Are you looking forward to it? We don't often talk like this. Two focal points blinded by our search for the perfect lens. You, my ally, my support network of one. You who have scavenged with me through the devastation after her disordered mind has rampaged through our lives again. You who has helped me search for pieces of our mum and from the rubble put together a stone mother. Even a makeshift relic will do. These last two poems, I think there's two. Well, there might be three. Is that okay? These next two poems, my mum was diagnosed 2 years ago at 71 with a personality disorder, and it came at a long process of over 20 years of dealing with different things. But the issue of consent came up, and because of what happened to her, she had Korsakoff's dementia brought on by alcohol withdrawal, and at that point all consent was taken away from us as a family. And they basically said, we're stepping in now, we're going to take over, you don't have any more choices. And we put up a good fight, and eventually we got some of the choices back. And she now lives in assisted living, and the story actually turned out pretty good. She's having a really good life now. But the sort of the feeling of losing consent to look after her, but also losing consent, her consent to do things while she had no idea of what was happening. And one of the things was I had to sell her home. And this is a problem like that. It's called a grief process. Everyone is going on about their daily life, while I stand here in the solicitor's office alone. No one to call, alone. No one available, alone. No good luck or you can do this text. Just me, alone. About to sell our family home. The lady behind the sliding window motions she is on a call and will be with me soon. I step back, survey the narrow staircase to my left, the walls all white. Exactly the reverse of the dentist next door. The offices used to be family homes and give off a comfy feeling until you were stung by needles and extortionate fees. Responsibility is pumping my lungs, chewing distressed breath. If I were a kettle, I'd be whistling. Panic hasn't had this much verb since I discovered Valliappan in 1998. Filled with passionate intensity, I lack all conviction. A supporter of euthanasia, I couldn't be party to it myself, nor could I put a sick animal down, even if it was for its own relief. I want to evaporate away into the car park, pick Mum up from her supported living, steal away to number 6, close the curtains, shut off the world, pretend anything beyond the two of us doesn't exist, just like we used to. The glass glides across. I step forward, hand over the document, scrolled and sealed with my own sweat alone. Mama bird. We slipped you from your intoxicating habitat when your inebriated head bobbed and dipped the other way. Clipped the wings that drove you, your getaway from unwinnable situations. We caged and tagged you so we could love you at ease from afar. How could we still have expected you to sing? And in an attempt to make it a little bit lighter, I don't do funny, but I kind of thought I would write something a little bit more positive. And it's probably a lot from my own point of view because I do live with anxiety, different types of anxiety, and I've just called this the anxiety poem. It's not always bungee jumping off buildings or parachuting out of planes. Sometimes it's giving your mind a break, accepting help. It's never taking the pill and saying I'm cured. It's letting science rebalance and empower you to reach out a hand to yourself saying, how can I help make my life better? Sometimes it's popping your head up out of the quilt, realizing the world isn't crashing in on you right now. Maybe making your way from bed to bathroom, emerging fully dressed, contemplating facing some of the day. Sometimes it's standing in the bread aisle of the supermarket, breathing in, identifying tiger, pan, crusty, whole grain, breathing out. Sometimes it's swiping your finger across the phone, lighting up in your hand, knowing you are opening yourself to a conversation you have no control over. Sometimes it's examining yourself in the mirror, looking at all angles and without crying, saying, I know who I am and I love myself. Committing yes to lunch with a friend so you can just leave the house. Affirming to yourself, I am sure I locked the door once. Yes, I am, and sleeping in that trust. Sometimes it's not being sorry for bumping into you, for calling, for disturbing you, for not being funny, for buying you a rubbish gift. Sometimes it's sitting alone in your own home with all the lights on without feeling like you'll take flight at any sound or the thought of any sound. Sometimes it's standing in front of an audience with jelly legs, shivering hands and a vibrating voice and doing it anyway, letting your mouth speak your mind's truth because your body is still learning the language, and that's okay. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Geraldine. Colin, I think it has been an amazing day. The motto of Voices is collectively exploring self-determination, but I think it's also this collectively self-exploring ourselves, which has been a long journey, I think, today. The voices of other people resonate a lot in us, and I think it makes us think a lot about, not only about how we structure a system or how we structure a law, but also how we structure our human relationships and how we can connect with others to do something different. Just before I give you the mic, I just wanted to say something that the whole day I have been thinking, I was talking with Reshma about this, that this whole discussion reminds me a very old Cuban joke about this man that arrived at home and find his wife with somebody else in the couch. So when a friend asks him, what are you gonna do? He says, I'm throwing away the couch. And that's what we're actually doing. And I keep thinking that what's actually what we're doing here when we talk about the mental health system. We know that the system doesn't work. We know that we have to explore better ways to provide support. But what the system does is keep insisting in maybe coercion is the answer. And I think we just keep throwing away the real discussion. And Voices actually today has helped to refocus again, and we think, what's the actually main question that we have to ask ourselves, no?
Thank you. And thanks to everyone who's made today so incredible. I'll do a list of thank yous at the end, but I just wanted to bring together some of the things that we've been hearing about today before we close. So as you probably know, Voices, today's event is part of the bigger project. So today we've been focusing on consent and in mental health, but we've had previous workshops on contract, freedom to choose where and with whom to live, and how to enter into contracts. We've also going to be having, we've had a session on criminal responsibility as well, and we're also going to be having an upcoming workshop later on in the year on consent to sex and relationships. So these are some of the dimensions of legal capacity that we've been exploring throughout this project, and I think today is a really important contribution to that. Some of the things that struck me from the stories and responses that we've heard today, it's often not the formal denial of legal capacity that is what people have chosen to focus on in their experience, although people have experienced different levels of formal and state-sanctioned coercion. It's the informal, it's the space in between, it's the soft coercion, it's the persuasion that went a bit too far, it's how that was reinforced within the family and the community, and also within the medical profession. I think from everyone's experience that we've heard about today, it can be really clear that it's environments and either the actual use of coercion or the threat of coercion that is really key to producing distress in us as human beings. And that's back to what Alberto was saying about throwing out the couch, that we're approaching this the wrong way. So instead of reinforcing the feelings of not fitting in or not being believed, we need to think more about belonging, and that's something that's come up in a lot of the presentations today. And we also, I think it's been really important for Mats and others who have affirmed for us that we've done lots of talking now and it's time for the doing. And that involves activism and direct action and other kinds of creative ways of working together. I think it's really important for us to imagine and to work together around the experiences that intersect with the experience of coercion in mental health. And we've heard today about the experiences of colonial oppression or sexism or class oppression, which have intersected with people's experiences. And there's a lot of strategies and approaches from communities who have experienced those forms of oppression that can also be useful in a mental health context. So thinking about bringing it home and making some things happen, I just wanted to reflect a little bit on what this means for the Irish context. We've talked about the ratification of the convention in Ireland and how long that's taken and how it still hasn't happened. My concern as well is around the fact that when Ireland does finally ratify, it will now enter reservations and declarations on these important issues around consent in the context of mental health treatment and also legal capacity more generally, as well as deprivation of liberty. And these are huge concerns for us and things that we need to fight back against. Just some things that struck me as well from the presentation. So we talked about, well, of course, we're not building up the alternatives because as long as force exists, it will continue to be used. And I'm reminded of a story that Teresa Degener, who sits on the UN Committee on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities, tells about a time in Germany where for a number of months, I can't remember if it was 6 or 9 months, a Supreme Court decision had outlawed force in psychiatry because of some very technical loophole. So for 6 months or 9 months, it wasn't possible to detain and forcibly treat people. And she said they did quickly fix this loophole in the law, and there was a lot of moral panic about all these mad people who were going to be released onto the streets as the result of lack of a law allowing them to be forcibly treated. But she said the day before the law changed, one of the most prominent psychiatrists in the country made a statement in a newspaper where he said it was the best thing that could have happened that we had this period where we couldn't force, because we had to be more creative and we had to think of other things that we could do instead. And it's just a pity that that period had to end, and it ended up in a situation where force was legitimised again. And when people talk about the use of force having saved them or saved their life, I suppose a question that always occurs to me is, that's the person's experience, and I don't want to denigrate that in any way, but I do wonder whether if something else had been offered that was not coercive, would that equally have saved the person's life? Would that equally have made the difference to them being here or not being here? So I think that's something that I always want to ask and think about what that would look like. So it just remains for me to thank everyone who's made today possible, but also to remind people that today's presentations from our storytellers and respondents and the speakers earlier today will all be archived and put online on our website so people can view them afterwards. And please spread the word about what you've heard today, and also about the project more generally. I'm very, very privileged to have had artists here with us today, and I know from among the storytellers in the project there's a lot of artistic and creative expression. So we really welcome that, and we want to encourage that into the future. And we're always looking for new artists to work with in this project. So if you can think of someone, definitely tell them about the project. So I want to thank all of my colleagues and everyone from the centre who's made today possible, particularly the core team of Liz and Cliona, who've been absolutely amazing in making today happen, but also Mary, Sharon and Joe on the administrative side, who've been dealing with a lot of the things quietly behind the scenes. All of our volunteers today who've been doing such amazing things, Maria keeping everybody on time, Emma doing fantastic tweeting at the back, everyone who was doing the mics and helping with the speakers and setup, so Emily, Alex, George, Victor, Aisling, Sarah, Charlotte, Adrian and Maria and Sinead. Alberto for chairing today, very capably I think, very important, very difficult thing to keep everyone's attention throughout the day and to draw together the experiences and lessons that we've learned, but I think you did a great job. And just to say that I'm so proud and so privileged to have heard the stories that we heard today and the responses to them. I think we have an incredible band of rebels, dreamers, revolutionaries, talkers and doers amongst us, and can you imagine all the things that would be possible if we all got together like we're doing now. And I really encourage people to go and talk to people who you've heard today and follow up with them. I'm sure that most people who are here will be quite happy to share their contact details with others who are interested in their work, and so that we can spread the message of what needs to be radically different in society, not just in mental health treatment in the future. So thank you all.